Hi, Scorpio. Welcome to your July 2020 Astro Alchemy report. It's Raina here. And the month of July is going to be, I don't know if it's going to turn out this way, be a lot more mellow because we don't have a lot of transits that are occurring, but we do have a lunar eclipse. Actually, both Saturn going back into Capricorn and that lunar eclipse can trigger your third house because your third house is Capricorn, which is the house of teaching things, learning things, communicating things, and your mind itself, like the what's going on up there. It can be your siblings, it can be your neighbors, your local area. And so if any of you have been like thinking of leaving, relocating, there may be something that's keeping you anchored in place. I look at Saturn as an anchor, the symbol of it. And it certainly does have that effect. Now, in retrograde motion, it kind of eases up on those restrictions, but it does cover that ground. So Saturn has been briefly in your fourth house of home and family. And this occurred from the time it entered Aquarius back in, I believe it was around mid-March until May when it went retrograde. So 2 months, only got up to 1 degree of Aquarius. But this is an angular house for you. This is the house of the home and family. And it's funny, I've made this observation before when I was learning about angular houses. One of the definitions, it's the first, fourth, seventh, and 10th houses. And these are the houses, they're supposed to be the most significant houses for a person in their life, like a lot of things happening. I don't know if you can really make that claim that these are the most important houses. I think your fourth house, certainly your childhood and things like that. But what about the fifth house? What about, these things are not chopped liver here. So anyway, but it is significant because we're talking about what is considered major influences when you have it go into one of these houses. So you have Saturn going back into the third house from that fourth house. So I think 2021 is when you're going to see a lot more action, Scorpio, in that fourth house arena. And I'm not going to talk too much about that, but it's going to involve more responsibility as it relates to real estate matters. So, for instance, if you're, I was going to say if you're 30 or something, maybe you're going to buy your first house, but actually you might buy your first house and be 50 or 60, it really doesn't have anything to do with age, especially nowadays, because everything is so crazy and things are just not predictable. So it's not just a given that you're going to be 30 years old and be able to afford a house or even want a house, that's just, things are not as cut and dried, which is a good thing because now we have a greater sense of possibility and thus a greater freedom. So Saturn goes back into that third house on the 1st. The third house deals with the mind and all those things I was talking about. Siblings, aunts and uncles and cousins, I think, are also third house. If you were taking care of somebody, like an aunt or a sibling, you may be called back to be doing a little bit more of that for the rest of this year or at some point during this year. And because when Saturn was in that house for the last few years, these are the kind of themes that may have cropped up. Not saying that it was, but it could be. Another thing that can happen is you may be inspired to take another training course. If you do so, I wouldn't be surprised if it's not necessarily this summer or in the next few months, but more towards the end of September when Saturn goes direct. Because when Saturn is retrograde, I mean, it is possible that you would do that, but you might just be kind of getting your bearings about exactly what it is that you need to work on in this area of training and getting credentials and so on and so forth. This could be even like a book, a novel that you had started, or a blog. A blog might even be more apropos, because the third house is, to me, more like the media, consumable information, not something that you would necessarily go back and linger with like a novel. But, in general, it can be writing for sure. And it's the house of social media, so that could be also in play here. And I notice sometimes people take a break from their YouTube channel, and it's always kind of funny when people do that, because then they come back and they say, well, I just needed, to get my head clear, or blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it might be true, but sometimes I think there's other things going on, like, they're not getting enough AdSense, and then they decide, well, something's better than nothing. So I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit too cynical. But I mean, I wouldn't blame somebody if that's how they felt. And this is a trigger to you on the 5th with Scorpio, the lunar eclipse here at 13 degrees of Capricorn. And so that can see something leaving your life that is third house related. And it may even, this may be like not occurring on this date, just to let you know. Sometimes people will say to me, even with tarot readings, oh, this happened to me a year ago. And it sounds like it doesn't make sense because of the timing aspect, but really, especially like with astrology, I would say, the eclipse action has an official date, but not necessarily that is when you will experience it. Because even like with a regular full moon, there isn't a time when it's exact, but you might feel that energy for days ahead of time. And sometimes when I notice that there are multiple people acting nutty out on the street, I will like kind of go through my mind, is there a full moon coming up? And so many times I've been like, oh, that explains it. So that eclipse for some Scorpio people will actually be affecting your second house of earned income. Because, I mean, and this is, I've been saying if you're born after between 14 and 29 degrees of Scorpio. However, that is only given the equal house system. So I don't want to get too far into that. But for some of you, this is going to be in your second house. And therefore, this will be a financial impact. And that could be actually a good thing. I used to think, oh my God, a lunar eclipse. This means that money will be taken away. And it's like, no, it could be that it comes in because this is like an apex. This is the highest point. And sometimes it's like it's being held back in some way, and then it's just like whoosh, and it comes in. So some kind of change with finances could be on the good side, and it can be a great time to retire, I think, because you might be feeling, well, I mean, this is before the Mercury goes direct, but whatever. I'm just saying within this month, because if you've been afraid of losing a source of income, even if you have savings or you're getting Social Security, you may feel this sense of like, I just can't do it. I can't bring myself to turn in my resignation because of the finality of it. And this can maybe bring something from the universe that makes it happen, but that you really wanted. It's not like going against your wishes. On the 12th, Mercury goes direct at 5 degrees of Cancer. This is a fellow water sign, and this does impact your 9th house. Scorpio, I don't know if any of you are planning trips and maybe things got delayed or screwed up. The passport got screwed up. Well, things are going to get sorted out. And by the 30th, Mercury will come out of its shadow. This can even be about if you've been wavering about going to college, or whether it's your first time or your third time. And maybe you're having a change of heart, but you're gaining some information, researching about it, and now you can decide what you're going to do, whether you're going to proceed or not. Mars is in Aries all month, Scorpio. Mars is one of your rulers, and so that can be very energizing for you. The area that it's actually falling in is your 6th house of work, though. So Mars in the 6th may point to some kind of conflicts in the workplace. And, conflicts do happen. It's not like the end of the world. But you might be fighting for some cause. If not for yourself, then somebody else. Mars in Aries is like championing the underdog. So that could be something that you're doing on behalf of somebody else, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's with yourself on your behalf, and that you are being very defiant. Mars in its own sign is very rebellious and very rash, so be careful that you don't do something that you regret later, because with that lunar eclipse in the 2nd, that could be what I'm talking about. And maybe it's of your own doing, where you just decide to leave, and now you don't have that source of income. And it was an eclipse, it got eclipsed out. But I would say that in those particular situations, you probably had a good reason for being upset, and maybe you're better off, even if it feels a little bit uncertain. If it's something that seems to be coming very spontaneously within yourself. On the 20th, we have a black moon, the 2nd new moon in a month at 28 degrees of Cancer. So these hits have been to areas that are very, kind of in this mental area. So I'm talking about the hits. I'm talking about the 3rd and 9th houses. These are called mental houses, and they involve learning, but the 9th house is abstract learning, and this is where Cancer is for you, Scorpio. So this can be a time with the black moon until the next black moon 2.5 years from now, where you can create a whole new cycle for yourself around, perhaps if you're going to graduate school, if you are, doing something in academia, or if you're going to write, you've decided to write a novel. Maybe you've turned an article into something that you're going to write along, like a book-length manuscript. The 9th house can be publishing. So that could be the incubation period, or the process of writing that book in the next 2.5 years, or a series of books. And travel, if you have wanted to travel long distance, this may be the green light for that. On the 22nd, we have the sun in Leo, and there's another one of these angular houses, the 10th house of career. So now things start to heat up. Pardon the pun, with the sun heating up with your career matters. And maybe that connects with travel in some way, that you're going to be traveling for work, a long distance. Who knows? But in any case, it does seem like you're letting go of things that are in your everyday life, like your, geographically, like your local area, with that lunar eclipse occurring in the third house, for some of you. And that may lead to going far away. Okay, that's what I have for you, Scorpio. I hope you enjoyed this. If you'd like a personal reading, the link is below. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.